What's up, guys, and welcome back for another solo mining episode. We're gonna be out in the Skiff today, and the topic for today basically is going to be a comment from a member on the channel, and they're basically asking what variables are in what conditions I chose to do, say, drone mining. Was it location based, or what are the specifications there? And I talked about this a little bit in the past, but it really comes down to just like making yourself a hard target. What that means, and the root kind of that is, whenever I was in the military, it was something that we were taught, and the idea, the concept is that you add variance essentially to your routine. So more specifically, we would apply it to, say, recon patrols in Afghanistan, right? So instead of taking the same path every day, because the tactic out there would be that we wouldn't really take pop shots from, like, far out. We would, they would just try to see our route the day prior and then plant IEDs, where they think that we would go. And we carried metal detectors and all that stuff with us, but we try to change our route every day so that, we kind of avoided that kind of stuff as best possible. Now, this concept can be used and applied to pretty much any part of your life, but also I apply it a lot to how we play, or how I mine, or how I do anything really in Eve. Not just mining, but also like ratting and everything like that. So we're going to expand on that question a little bit, and I'm going to kind of explain what my thought process is for why I take certain ships for different activities and whatnot. So before we get started into any of that, we're obviously, like I said, we're in the Skiff today, just because I haven't taken the Skiff out in a couple days, so I figure we'll do a few runs here while we kind of cover this topic. But I'm not really going after a certain ore type here. I'm just kind of grabbing everything essentially, putting more on the stockpile, as it were. So in terms of just like at the highest level of like making myself a hard target in Eve and adding variance, that's really kind of the biggest reason why I do it. But also, changing ships, doing different ships every day does kind of break up monotony too. So it does help with like the proverbial burnout, right? The inevitable burnout, if you like grind way too hard. The difference between, like, taking a Skiff out one day and a Macron the next, is, EHP, tank or hold. Very, very minor differences, but they feel different when you're out there mining with them. So it does feel kind of fresh and stuff. Now, depending on what I'm going to be doing and where I'm going to be doing it, that's when I kind of run through a checklist in my mind for what ship I want to take. In terms of the actual question that was on the channel about drone mining, for high sec at least, it's not really location based. It's like, do I feel like doing that today or not? Has it been a while since I've done it? Because it is a gameplay aspect that I do enjoy. In almost every situation, if it's a location problem, like if it's really noisy in that system, you're probably not going to want to take drones out anyway, because it is a slower way to get ore. So in a lot of situations where you have maybe limited playtime, or that you need to try to get as much ore in your ship as fast as possible before a fleet rolls through or something, then you're going to try to go with something that is going to get you the most for the short amount of time that you're out there. And that's one of the big reasons why we would use implants and faction modules and all these things in nullsec when we were doing like fleet mining in my mining corp. We wanted to, we figured we were not going to get enough time on grid before we had problems, so we wanted to make sure we get the most yield possible. So in like a lot of cases, we would get interrupted maybe 20-30 minutes or less into our mining op, and we would have to come off grid for a while. And so we wanted to make sure we could get as much as we could in that short amount of time. So that's why we would run like faction ore modules, and we would run all mining laser 2 upgrades, maybe even faction mining laser 2 upgrades in the lows. Not go damage control, not go any like sort of extra tank, right? We would be dragging with the Rourke, so once if something ever happened, we could just take off and everything. And That's one reason why you would pick, certain things like in that situation where you're trying to get as much possible. Then yeah, go with the best boost you can get safely. In our case, it was like the Oracle, and then just as many Hulks as you possibly can. And a lot of our members would actually run more than one Hulk with that, so we would end up having like the Oracle plus all probably like 10 or 11 or more Hulks trailing in behind it. Now this is before compression modules were added, right? So when we filled up that Oracle, we'd go to a pause, compress it, and do our thing and all of that, because we were basically going from like one bookmark to a next, maintaining enough speed that we could instant warp when we needed to. Now for high sec, it really just kind of comes down to convenience and variance for the most part. For me, a lot of it is just, hey, I haven't taken the Mackinac out in a while, so let's do that. Or haven't taken the Skiff out in a while, let's do that. But in certain areas, different areas of space, there are different considerations to take. So we're just going to talk about high sec first. So basically in high sec, you have the opportunity to mine ore, ice, or gas. So if I was going to go after a gas site, I expect it to be very competitive. I expect that I probably wasn't the first one there, and that I probably don't need a very big ore hold to get everything, right? So in that situation, for high sec, I probably would take maybe a prospect or something, just because it's fast and we can covert cloak and everything like that. We'll go to bring up the ship tree just so we can kind of walk through all this a little bit. So like prospect has a bonus for gas. So even in wormhole space, if I'm doing gas, it's either going to be prospect if I think that I can get a decent amount of it, of the harvestable cloud, or if I want to go super cheap, in case I'll lose it, then I'll go venture, because ventures are super cheap. And if you fill a venture up with gas in a wormhole, you pay for that ship like 3 times over before you're even done, which is great. The endurance is going to be something that I would choose to take to either do or ice in, probably not nullsec. I've taken the endurance out in nullsec, but a lot of areas that I've actually mined in nullsec for ice, I've felt safe enough that I would just take like a porpoise and a Hulk out there and fill up the porpoise all the way, and no compression available there, but fill them up and then go take a break, dock, unload, and then kind of do multiple sessions like that. Now in terms of high sec ice, most of the time when I go do a high sec ice, I'm getting bumped off rocks or something, so I probably wouldn't want to go like anything super crazy. Endurance is good for ice in high sec if you just want to get like a little bit to maybe get some heavy water to facilitate your sieging and your porpoise or your orca. But it's been a long time since I've actually gone like full crazy and try to get a full amount or crazy amount in high sec ice, because there's always problems that come out of it. So the endurance is nice in that situation. That's what I would probably take if I was going to do that, because if I do get bumped, then it's fast enough that it can kind of get back to the location, or it can warp off and come back and kind of keep the pressure on for the most part. And then for ore in high sec, it's basically whatever you feel like. In most cases, I'm not taking a coveter or a Hulk out unless I'm boosting with a porpoise orca. So those usually don't come out unless I explicitly am going to use boost, because that's where those ships really do shine. So really it comes down to budget. If you're kind of on the cheaper side, then you're probably going to look at barges. Procure is great for tank speed and kind of makes you feel a little bit more safe there. The coveter, like I said, if you're using boost, pretty much. And then retriever, paper tank, nice ore hole, but a big gank target, very easy to take down. So I usually kind of leave the retriever alone for the most part. If it's not a budget issue, if you really want to actually kind of min-max the yield and all that stuff, then you're looking into exhumers. We should probably check okay, we're still good. I'm sitting here talking and I'm not even checking my my rocks. But if you really do want to min-max and all that stuff, then you're going to be in like the exhumer range, where kind of the same principle. Skiff, if you want more tank, you want to feel a little bit more safe doing what you're doing. Hulk, if you're being boosted or if you're boosting yourself. And Mackinac, I've been using Mackinac probably more in the past year than I have in my entire time playing Eve. because the ore hold is nice, the tank is decent, and I haven't really had any issues out in space with it. So I'm not really budget conscious. So that's why you see me bounce between like Mackinac and Skiff. Some days I feel like, having the Skiff out is a little bit more tanky, or if I really just want to like chill on the belt for like 25 minutes or so, or in this case, in an observatory system, 21 minutes, 21 minutes, I'll take the Mackinac. But really, it's just kind of showing those ships kind of love and stuff like that. Another thing I forgot to mention is moon mining. Now, moon mining is kind of a different thing too. It's like, I would definitely set up like an orca or a porpoise, probably an orca actually drone mining on a moon. And I've done that actually for hours on end. You usually don't have any problems. Rear tether is usually right there. We can usually drag and stuff like that. Mackinac is really great for moon mining as well if you're not being boosted. But in almost every situation where you might boost yourself with a porpoise or an orca, Coveter if you're not budget conscious, or Coveter if you are budget conscious, or Hulk if you just really want to go for broke there. Now in nullsec things get a little more complicated, because then you have a couple more variants. You have a couple more variables you have to kind of consider, and that's mainly just the rats. You got battleship rats out there, so in most cases you either need to like have enough bonuses to your drones to take them down fast, so you're not engaged if something happens, somebody comes in local or something, or enough tank to tank them while you're mining, which is usually what I do. Now, in terms of, let's get these rocks turned back on. In terms of things that I do in nullsec, right? There's ice. Sometimes you'll find gas, which kind of follows the same rules as wormhole space. Take either a prospect or a venture fit for that. But for ore, it's either like Merc, or I'm going to be doing some of the finer ores and the anomalies, like the crocite, going around getting all the omber, something like that. If it's Merc, I'm usually going out with a procurer now. It used to be a Skiff, but since the Skiff got slower on getting off grid and lost a mid slot, it makes more sense to just go cheaper and do the procurer. And so usually I just kept a procurer completely fitted all the time with the Merc rig and the deep cores and the crystals, and I would just go out and hit those rocks, because those rocks are usually small enough that they can all fit in the procurer anyway. So then you fill the procurer, you kind of go out there and you bookmark everything. You go in the entire system, you bookmark every Merc rock, and then you just kind of go work down your bookmark list. And then for ice out there, like I've said, probably if it's a little rowdy in the area, if intel is kind of like, really popping off, then you might just take an endurance and just do it really slow like that. Or if you don't really want to take a Hulk out there or a Coveter, then, endurance plus porpoise. Or if you decide to drag, or if you like to do the drag mine thing, then you could do Orca, Hulk, and if you have a Poisson system, you're relatively safe and you can bank a lot of ice that way. So that's kind of the consideration there. I haven't done a whole lot of wormhole mining in recent times. Something I do probably want to get more into. But usually when I go into a wormhole, I'm making sure I'm bringing things like, a core scanner, because usually I like to go inside a wormhole, mine the anomalies, and usually you have to go in for like one thing or another, because fitting might not be available to you. So it would be great in order to take like a prospect in and then be able to kind of on the fly change to gas scoops, and then, or if you don't have docking for stations that are there, then that might be a little difficult. Now, one thing I've done in the past is like take an Orca in with you, have all your ships in the maintenance bay. The Orca, you can fit off of the Orca, so you basically get out of the Orca, you park it, which is a risk, that a lot of people aren't comfortable taking. You get out of the Orca, you park it, and then you shoot your ship out of the maintenance bay or whatever, or you can board it, whatever. Then you get out of your Orca, and then you can fit and do all what you got to do. But that's still taking a lot of risk, because if somebody scans down that Orca and you're off mining, and they have the skills to get in it, then boom, it's theirs, right? You probably don't see a lot of people talking about disembarking ships, but it is a strategy that's used in wormhole space, just to provide like fitting and stuff like that. But like there's good amounts of ice in wormholes as well. There's fields that have all the four different types of ice there. which are normally region based. So you'd have to go to different regions of nullsec to get different types of ice to get the isotopes and stuff. So that is oh, we're full. Jeez, I'm just sitting here talking. Let's go dock up. I was wondering what was going on. I'm just sitting here just rambling. But like I said, like normally you have to go to different regions to get the different types of isotopes and stuff, but in wormhole space there are fields that have all of them there, so a lot of good harvesting to be had out there. But I tend to lean towards having I love covert ops, right? You'll probably see me in the next little bit use the prospect for a lot, because it's very, very convenient to have a covert cloak, even in like low sec. And like low sec is another like thing too. It's like the ore anomalies are great. You can get Kernite on the belt for Isogen and Mexilon and stuff. The inconvenience is a high factor there, right? If I was going to go into low sec and mine, I would take either a prospect and just sig tank the destroyers and the rats that are out there, which means I would just be orbiting with like an afterburner on and just try to take as little damage and fill up and then take off, because you have no drones on the prospect. Or you could just take like a venture out there with like a warp core stab or something, warp core stabilizer 2 on it, and then that would give you, with the inherent bonus to warp core strength on the venture, that plus the -2 to scram strength on the warp scram, you're really hard to catch. Like the chances are when you see them on D-scan and then you see them first pop up on your like PvP overview, if you start warp right then, chances are they're probably not going to get 2 scrams on you, or more than 1 at least. If you don't believe me, take a PvP ship, take a combat ship into low sec with the explicit purpose of like finding a venture, tackling it and killing it. It is absolutely difficult, and it is a concept I've talked about in the past too. It's like if people are kind of risk adverse and they're not really sure of their capabilities when it comes to like PvP or conflict avoidance and stuff like that, put yourself on the other end of the table. Get a PvP ship, get a combat ship, go out there and try to kill a miner and see what they do, and see what tactics they're using to prevent you from getting the kill, and then study that and then use that information when you're in the miner chair, right? So that's why I feel really comfortable in low sec with like a venture, even more so with the prospect, because of the covert cloak. You can, if they come on to grid with you and you escape, if they don't leave system, then you can just stay cloaked from your safe, go to another belt, assess the situation, see if there's rats in that belt, pop out, target up, do a little bit more mining, which is great. Because that's like I said, low sec is more of like an inconvenience than anything, because if you're constantly running from rats because you don't have the drone power to take them down, or sig tanking only allows you to stay on grid for a certain amount of time, or there are people constantly coming to belts and kind of chasing you around, you're not really at the end of the day doing a whole lot of mining. Instead, you're just kind of running around avoiding stuff. I don't really recommend people going into low sec and mining, because that we have rare ore sites in high sec, you can get your Isogen and you can get your Noxium if that's what you're after, and that stuff is actually probably worth just as much than the stuff you get out of in low sec. So that is I pretty much don't do any low sec mining anymore, because if I need that stuff, I will just go out and find rare ore sites and do it that way. And they're also the same border sites in border nullsec systems too, but those could be heavily camped for the most part. But that's pretty much it. I mean, in Poshvin, I think I've talked about Poshvin, maybe not. Poshvin is usually a porpoise and a prospect. I usually go in there with an alt. If they don't have positive standings with Trig and Indicom, I'll go in there, kill a few rogue drones, enough to get them like over 1 standing with both, and then I'll just take like a prospect and a porpoise in there. The porpoise is literally there just to compress. If you can find a good trig system that has like a static high sec wormhole and both your transport alt and your mining alt that stays in that system have the standings, then it's very easy to actually just bring in like a transport ship, like a blockade runner or something, like a crane, and then pick up like a bunch of compressed ore, and then go right back through the wormhole and be good to go. Even if that wormhole collapses, if it's a static high sec, then there'll always be a high sec connection somewhere, which is nice. Normally, there's a lot of stuff to actually mine in Poshman as well, but I normally have been going there to do like Spud Main because it has all the things that, you know, kind of fill in the gaps for industry or what I mine in high sec. So going out there, even like taking a few trips a day, like 3 times a week for a Spud Main is enough to really kind of get, you know, quite a bit done. That and rare ore sites, it kind of renders mining in low sec pretty moot. I have wanted to actually start a new tune just to strictly live in low sec and just kind of show what that lifestyle looks like, because I think that if everybody kind of like saw like how to proper like avoid combat and how to like sig tank while also trying to mine in low sec and how much time off rock you are, they'd probably be like, yeah, probably not something. I mean, if you're into like combat PvP, low sec is the best place. Like that's where people go to find fights. It's just, in my opinion, there are better ways to spend your time to get the same materials that don't require you to just constantly, you know, move around and everything. I know I said we were going to do a couple of runs, but right after I went out, like the system got kind of crazy. But also I just kind of went on a tangent too. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I think we've covered up pretty much everything that I've really kind of taken into consideration. I don't really, when I was in nullsec, I wasn't really doing a whole lot of ore mining other than Mercoxit, and that only really required a procure, and it was cheap. When I was doing fuel blocks, then I was like doing ice maybe like once a week. I'd go and clear like the belt, like a couple of ice belts in a day with the Roracle and like 4 or 5 hulks, and that was, I got so much yield drag mining through ice belts that you don't have to go out there every day. So that adds a little variance too. It's like, you know, people coming through, they don't always see you out there every single day doing the same thing. And they can almost predict that they can take, you know, plan a fleet and come out there and grab you. I guess that kind of circles back to like, you know, the original question of like adding variance. It's like, if people are watching you, if people are seeing like, hey, this guy with his alts, they're always in these ships, they're always doing this thing, let's try to plan for it the next time. But then like they come back the next day and you're like not on. Maybe like you've added variance to like your, when you're online and when you're playing, or you've added variance to what ships you're in, or you're, one day you might have like all your alts, you know, being boosted, and the next day you might just be in a single skiff. It makes it really hard for them to kind of like plan to get like the most the highest valued kill mail for their time, or whatever their motivations are. But hopefully that answers your question. And obviously, like any questions, leave any questions in the comments on these videos, and I'll do my best to elaborate and everything. But that's pretty much gonna be it for this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one.